The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome back to another fantastic Keefer and Kurre. I just listened to Need to Know. You need to listen to that show because it is my radio partner here talking out his side of his you-know-what for 30 minutes straight. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen someone go into the show and say, I have no clue what I'm going to talk about and somehow fill 30 minutes. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And so, I have to write tags for all these podcasts that I'm going to do. And the tag for this podcast is what 8 days in Las Vegas makes you realize this is what you need to know.
That's exactly that's perfect.
Because it was very not some, I don't want to say therapeutic, but it was very reminiscent of a lot of the things that you've enjoyed in your life, including your family and stuff that you've done in Las Vegas. So I wanted to bring that up. So make sure you listen to that show. Something happened this past Saturday night in Tupelo, Mississippi. At the Cadence Bank Arena that I wanted to throw out at you. I don't know if you saw the story. And again, when you're in Vegas,
no, I did not.
You don't know what's going on in Vegas or what's going on outside Vegas.
Yeah, it's like being on a different planet.
It's its own news cycle, and that's why you go. So evidently, Brantley Gilbert, who is a country music star, was on stage playing some music, doing his thing before a sold-out show there at the Cadence Bank Arena in Tupelo, Mississippi on Saturday night. And he's walking off stage, and someone gives him the finger, says, hey, come over here. We need to talk to you real quick. Says, we have an emergency. Your wife is giving birth in your tour bus right now. And he's like, holy smoke. So he walks off.
I did hear this, but I don't know details.
He walks off stage. And, of course, no one in the crowd knows what's going on. They think it's like an intermission. He walks off stage, and while she's giving birth, he gets on Instagram and does an Instagram live thing and says, I'm at a show right now in Tupelo, Mississippi, and my wife has just decided to go ahead and give birth. He called her, quote, unquote, a freaking savage because she's just a monster for doing all this while he's on the road and she's on the bus and she's giving birth to a little boy named Abraham. Her name is Amber. And he's like, my wife is a freaking savage, man. She's just amazing. He's like, cannot believe I get a chance to even, and she's very, very attractive, by the way. She's very pretty. Not to say that means anything, but it does. So he's like, this woman was the most amazing thing I've ever done in my life. He's also got an 8 and a 6-year-old daughter. And this would be his third child. And then after she gives birth, he posts a picture of the child's not breastfeeding yet, but the child's up on her chest. She's got a sheet that's covering herself, and she's sitting, looks like a tour bus couch. Wow. And he says, the show must go on. He leaves the bus and he goes back out and says, ladies and gentlemen, I just had a baby boy. And of course, the crowd goes crazy. Anyone's following him on social media sees that he's released this. And so people are sharing that, which was a really, really cool, neat way of doing things. Yeah. I remember when my wife gave birth to our first child, I adopted my first 2 boys from Guatemala. They're not brothers, but they were about 2 years apart. And because we had a hard time getting pregnant, and then my wife at the age of 40 got pregnant. And the doctor said, we're going to do everything we can to make sure we had this child. And we were so blessed. And now she's 12 years old. Her name's Lila Jane. And I remember I was doing radio with Jay and Al doing the opening drive. And obviously I'm telling my boss, and I knew that we were going to have this child on a particular day because we were having a C-section. I said, he goes, well, take all the time off you want, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I'll call the show. And he goes, are you sure? And I said, well, yeah. I said, that'd be great for ratings, man. I said, I can call the radio program while my wife's in labor. That'd be super. I mean, how often do you get a chance to do that? And I was all about the numbers, brother. I mean, you're talking to a guy that sat on the billboard for three weeks. I rode bulls. I did everything. It was all about the ratings, all about the numbers. And so I called the radio station on the hotline while my child is being born. And I'm kind of giving a play-by-play. And you can hear, my daughter crying in the background as she's being born, and I'm crying, and it was a beautiful moment. I don't think it was too intrusive. My ex, who's my ex now, didn't seem like she could care one way or another. She knew that was just part of who I was. And now looking back on it, I'm kind of like, that's such a sovereign, important, intensive, personal event. And I'm like, and so when I saw that Brantley Gilbert was doing that with his child, the first thing I thought of was, I wonder if his wife gives a rip. And she probably doesn't, because she knows he's a superstar. He's rock and roll. The show must go on. She gets that. She understands that's his part of his life, and that part.
And
of
he
life
was there for the moment.
And he was there for the moment. And so I was on Fox 6 this morning, and they were asking me about, whether he did the right thing. And I said, well, first of all, I think it has a lot to do with whether you're talking about child number 1 or child number 5.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that has a lot to do with it. And second of all, it's just funny because I've got this thing at social media right now. It's super important, certainly to our business. I understand that. And I want people to read my social media, but it is a look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. And I'm in a part of my life right now where I'm just kind of like, I'm just putting out great shows, and if people like them, they want to listen to them, like Need to Know and Keefer and Kurre and Starting Lineup and all that. That's great. That's great. As far as in just continually pushing things out and sharing my beef stroganoff that I had at a restaurant last Saturday night and saying, look at this wonderful beef stroganoff I had on my Instagram. I just don't do that kind of stuff. It's just, I'm like, but I mean, it would get reposted 1,000 times. I don't get it. I don't understand it. So I'm careful what I post, and it's got to be important. But I just want to get your thoughts. You've been in this industry, broadcast industry, for a long time. You've been calling dogs and ponies at tracks your entire life. I'm sure there have been some times where, you have to work. Mike Dubberly even asked me, he said, what happens, man, in Radio Land? Because we used to be live. We were live 24 hours a day.
Oh, sure.
And if something happened in the middle of your show, you didn't have somebody come in. There was no one to fill in for you. I mean, if someone got sick or something like that, if you got sick in the middle of the show, you stayed there. You just stayed there.
Yeah,
and you worked it out until you got off. Yeah, because you couldn't leave. There wasn't anyone that's going to come up, or if they were going to be a couple hours, and it wasn't going to make a difference. So I wanted to get your thoughts on how you've dealt with some things, because I know you have 2 older sons. Did you have any issues with that with your older sons? And how'd that lie with your ex, and how you dealt with those kind of things? And just the show must go on. What's your thoughts on that?
You made a really profound point on a second ago on it's really not fair or sensible, but the first one is such a wild ride that you really don't know what to expect. The first one is different. The first one that you have is, you're prepared 2 weeks before, and every moment you're thinking this could be it. Every time she has any kind of crazy, aberrant feeling, you think, oh, this is it. We got to get ready to go. So our first one, and I was fortunate at that point to be working in an organization up in Memphis where, as you mentioned, I was the director of publicity and the track announcer at Southland, which is in West Memphis, Arkansas, just across the bridge from downtown Memphis. And luckily at that time, my late brother, Charles, also was on the staff there. He basically operated the photo finish equipment, which was a technical job but when there's a real close finish, he had to develop the film and show it to the judges so they can make a call. But my brother also was a very skilled announcer. He was my backup. So when I had to miss things, Junior did double duty. He would call the race, dash to the photo finish booth, develop the film and put it up. But that first one, I basically missed that entire weekend because we knew it was imminent, and he filled in for me. So I really got a break there because there's not a lot of people that can go up in the booth. And I mean, there's a lot of people that go up and go, hey, it's time for the second race. But calling a race is quite a unique skill set. And in those days, Southland was a huge deal. We were doing gigantic money and had big crowds, especially on the weekends. And of course, Saturday was a doubleheader day with the matinee and evenings. So, of course, my wife goes into labor like late Friday night. We panic, go straight to the hospital. She lingers like all day, 7 or 8 hours.
On purpose.
Finally,
on purpose,
at 4:00 in the afternoon, I'm just on edge, walking around. Any progress? They come in like every half hour and go, she's whatever centimeters. It's going to be a little longer. Well, then Tony, this is kind of ridiculous, but the hospital. Some schmuck administrator comes in. It's finally like the last half hour before. Mr. Keefer, we need you to come down to the desk. We got some questions. We're trying to finish up your paperwork here. They're wanting to ask me questions about my insurance and that kind of stuff. I said, I'm 30 minutes from the birth of my first child here. I mean, are you kidding me? I was just incensed. But that's, hospital policy. We got to get all this squared away. So that was the first one. The second one is different because you're waiting, you know better than to get there 7 or 8 hours early. Mm-hmm. Well, Tony, we managed, and the hospital in West Memphis where Case was born was now not doing birth deliveries anymore. I guess it got, from a liability standpoint, they just got out of that business. So now the hospital was like 20 miles away over on the Memphis side. So at 6:30 again on a Saturday morning, we're very consistent with the Keefer family. I have to load Kathy in the car and drive like a maniac because she goes, I think my water's about to break. And I'm going, not here, not now. So we just haul ass across the giant bridge that goes over the Mississippi River and get into Memphis and finally get to the hospital about 10 minutes to 7. They hustle her in there. It was so stressful, Tony. I'm standing there at the bedside and all of a sudden I feel real lightheaded. And next thing I know, I'm on the floor and people are trying to revive me. I have fainted and the birth hasn't started yet. It wasn't I've already seen it. I've been there, done that, but it was just the stress, I guess. So they're having to tend to me. They're just ignoring her. She's 8 minutes from giving birth. But they get me back on my feet and I'm there to witness everything. And so that's my two experiences, but you're right. That first one, you don't have any idea what you're doing. But in situations like the musical performer over the weekend, I mean, I think he handled it the best way. And when you've had a couple, you kind of know the drill. They're out. They're good. They're doing well. Just think about the Old West before we had all this sophistication. I mean, people just out on the prairie just did this routinely, which is amazing to me. After seeing how it goes now, I'm sure you probably feel the same way.
Well, yeah. I mean, your wife would her water would break, or if she get pregnant, it's not like you're hopping in a horse and carriage. No. You're 3 and 4 days away from everyone, so it just happened, and then you'd hope like heck a doctor would come see you within 3 or 4 days. And that's a beautiful thing about God, what he did. I mean, there is a way for it to actually happen. That's why women have given birth in the backseat of cars. And police officers can do it and everything else. It kind of takes me back to, the show must go on. I was watching something on the History Channel about Teddy Roosevelt. Do you remember when Teddy was up on the pulpit and gets shot? He gets shot. He gets shot. He gets shot in the chest. Okay. He gets shot in the chest at close range and continues his speech while he bleeds.
Yeah. Well, that's, and I know a lot of people don't like Donald Trump, but in an interview recently, he said his first instinct in Butler, Pennsylvania a month or two ago was when they got him on his feet. He says, I wanted to finish my speech. And they said, hell no, we're getting you out of here. No, he's bleeding like a sieve.
He would have.
When you're a performer and you and I have done a lot of these kind of deals, I mean, you're committed to doing your show, and it's almost obsessive, but Teddy Roosevelt actually shot. Luckily, he had some kind of metal cigarette case that blunted the bullet, but it still was in the chest, and he just pressed on, which is just unbelievable.
I mean, it really is. Yeah, and there was no one there to tell him, Mr. President, we need to go. And he was like, no, I'm not getting
They told Trump, you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
You're out of here.
And listen, his fan base loved that. Because let's be honest, and Joe and Donald are about the same age now. If that's Joe's getting down and probably coming out on a stretcher. He ain't walking out.
Oh, there's no question.
And again, anytime you've ever bled any from anywhere in near the face and the ears and stuff, man, it just bleeds profusely. So I'd be honest with you, I thought the election was wrapped up that day. I thought after when he said fight, I thought, okay, this is over.
With the American flag in the background, it's almost like it was posed.
Unbelievable. But I have thought, several things. I remember getting food poisoning at gigs where, I had to walk off stage, and I did that at a concert once. Snow was never going to stop me from doing a show because, radio, the definition of radio is to inform the community, the public community. It's radio was made. We have radio stations that could cover the entire United States of America. And if it was just about entertainment and communication, then we just have 3 or 4 radio stations. We have thousands of radio stations, and that's because we need to know what's going on from a local standpoint. Radio stations are created for locality. That's why this whole idea of everyone doing syndication kind of sucks because you can hear it everywhere. We love the local radio. So that's why I started Tony Kurre Radio. I love to hear Kip Keefer. I love to hear Tony Kurre. I love to hear, Michael Coleman. And because you can't hear it now with the internet, obviously you can hear us everywhere, but it's still local. 85% of my listening audience is within 100 miles of the Birmingham area. And, I remember, if it was going to a sniff of snow, I'm packing a bag. I'm going to the radio station. And of course, the people I used to work with thought I was crazy. I said, this is what I live for. This is what I live for. I said, I'm on the radio. I want people to listen to me because this is the only place they can get information. I will tell you how much I loved radio, and you're gonna freak out when I say this. I moved to Louisville, Kentucky, back in 1986, and I was there for 3 derbies. And every derby, I requested to work on the radio station that entire afternoon from like noon to 7. And of course, everyone at the radio station was like, hallelujah, Tony Kurre lives, because my ass ain't coming into work. I'm going to be at the Derby. Everyone was at the Derby, throwing down, having a great time. I wanted to work the Oaks that night. I wanted to work all day on that Saturday because I knew I was the only game in town. I knew there was only one place. We didn't have the rights to run the race on the radio station, but I knew that everybody in the world was coming into Louisville, Kentucky to watch the Derby, and I was on the radio, and I had a chance to be on stage. I don't care how many people were listening, but I had a chance to put on a great show and do a wonderful job. And so I wanted to work. I asked to work, and people were like, and I loved horses. I'm from Cincinnati. We had, River Downs, and I loved betting on the horses. But I also really enjoyed the radio aspect of it. And, the old show, I do remember, do you remember the movie All That Jazz?
Oh yeah.
With Roy Schneider. And it starts at the beginning of the movie where him popping a couple of pills, looking in the mirror going, it's showtime. And then by the end of the movie, he's taken like 6 or 7 different pills. He's popping. His eyes are drooping down to his kneecaps. He's lost his hair. He looks like shit. It's too dry. And he's like, it's showtime. Well, he was going to do whatever it took. He was going to take whatever it took to get out there and do all that jazz. Absolutely. And it's showtime. And I do remember there was a portion of my life where I may have been up for a day or two, and all of a sudden, that's right, I got to be at the Jitterbugs gig tonight from 4 to 7 or whatever. And I remember standing for that mirror like Roy Schneider going, it's showtime. And you pack it up and you head out there and you just get it done. And what you got to do. Yeah.
I think the greatest story along these lines that I've ever heard, and inspires me every time I think about it. But when Jim Valvano, the coach of North Carolina State, was stricken with cancer, he declined pretty rapidly, but he still insisted that, he still wanted, he had a passion for golf. He wasn't coaching NC State anymore, had run into some NCAA violations or whatever, which were kind of ridiculous.
You don't ever hear about that, do you? You don't, and for good reason.
So Valvano, who was celebrated like crazy for pulling off the biggest upset in NCAA tournament history, when his ragtag North Carolina State team beat the mighty Houston Cougars with Akeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, Michael Young. These are all NBA players. Yeah. Houston was unbeatable, Tony, and North Carolina State found a way to do it. So Valvano, when he was stricken with cancer, they began what's now the V Foundation, which was money for fundraisers for people with cancer for research. Dick Vitale was the driving force behind getting that started. And they had a big event planned in New York that night where Valvano was going to speak. But the morning that he was supposed to do that speech, he was so sick in bed, couldn't even move hardly. Mike Krzyzewski, who was the coach at Duke all those years, was going to fly up with him to attend that event. He got to Valvano's house in his car with his driver to pick him up, and his wife brought him up to see Jim, and he called New York and said, "There's no way Jimmy V is going to be able to make this. He is so bad today. We're gonna have to pivot and do something else." And his wife went up and told Jim that we're not going to New York now. And he somehow sat up in bed, put his feet on the floor, and said, "Get me to the shower. We're going to effing New York. I have to speak tonight. This is critically important to me and to people in the future that might be in my position."
Yeah.
And this guy, Tony, came off literally his deathbed, basically, pushed himself. They got him up there. They had to dress him themselves in his tux because he was too weak to do it. And then the most amazing thing happened when those lights came up and they had him side stage. They were going to help him to the podium. He broke off from all the people trying to get him out there, said, no, I'm walking to the podium. And he came striding out like nothing was wrong. And he made probably the most amazing speech that I ever can remember.
Yeah.
It chokes me up to even think about it. But it was the one was, don't give up. Don't ever give up was at the end. He says, maybe it's too late for me, but your support of this foundation could save countless people down the road. And you talk about a guy with the show must go on mentality. That is the shining example of what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I you're right. Cause every time I hear that speech, it's like when Forrest Gump comes on, I have to watch it. I just have to watch it. And whenever I hear that Vivano speech,
don't you love the part where the guy off stage is signaling to him he's got 30 seconds?
He's like, this guy's telling me I got to get down on stage, and I'm dying up here.
Some Italian curse word. I don't know what it is. Bufangu.
Could you believe?
This schmuck is telling me I got 30 seconds.
Yeah. Could you imagine being that guy? That guy, because someone had to tell that guy, "Hey, flash the light. He needs to come down." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Yeah, it's like, there's no way. This is not the Academy Awards. Get out of here. No, he was gonna speak for you. That was great. That speech is just so wonderful.
Go back and watch that on YouTube if you haven't seen it in a while.
Oh man,
because if you're kind of having a down day or you're feeling sorry for yourself, look what Jimmy V did. And then supposedly, Tony, as soon as he walked off the stage, as soon as he got out of range from the audience, he basically collapsed into the arms of 4 or 5 other people. I mean, so just to be able to reach down and find that is such a great example to all of us and exactly what we're talking about.
No, I totally agree with you. And the show must go on. There is a certain, and I wasn't sure where this was going, and I love this because it really speaks to the heart, and if anything else, just the adrenaline of the human body to continue to go on when it really needs to. And my dad was stricken with cancer, and then he had chemo, and then he beat it, and then he got cancer again. And just to show the human life and just how it works, he had fallen like on a Friday. And thank goodness my mom was a hoarder. There were so many boxes in the garage that my dad couldn't hit the floor. It was impossible. You fall in my garage. My dad said, your mom was here for me, man. I fell and didn't break a bone. But he fell and went into the hospital, and they were going to administer hospice at his house. And my dad said, no. He's like, I'm not. My dad was a very proud man. He had bed sores and the whole nine, and my sister had to do everything because she was a nurse, and he's like, and he didn't even want her to do that, but he's just a very proud man and wanted to be able to do everything on his own. And the guy threw newspapers out a window for 40 years and just was just an amazing man. He was the John Wayne of my time for sure. And he was in the hospital, and I couldn't get up because I had some of other issues that were almost as severe here with my wife at the time. And I kept trying to find him. I could not find him. And I knew that he had fallen, but I knew he was still alive. And my dad was my best man at my wedding. And he was just one of my best, he was my best friend. And I kept trying to call everybody. I called my sister, and my sister said, "Oh, they took him out of the hospital and they put him in this other facility. They put him at a facility before you take him home." And basically, they were telling him he had cancer, but he was going to live. He didn't want to live anymore. He just was like, I'm ready to go. And so that Monday morning, I finally found him. I found a phone number to reach him, and I called him. And the nurse answered the phone. I said, "Hey, I'm Tony Kurre. So I'm Dick Curry's son." She goes, "He's been looking for you." And I said, I've been looking everywhere for him. I said, I didn't know where to reach him, didn't know how to find him, couldn't call him, blah, blah, blah. And she said, well, I'll put him on the phone. She said, but he hasn't talked in 2.5 days. And he's going to go quickly, and it's not going to be long, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay. I said, thank you for letting me know. She said, but you can certainly talk to him. So put her on the phone. So and there was, the silver lining of cancer is, you're not going to live forever. When you've been given a sentence, you get everything off your chest. There's nothing else I could have said to him. He was my Vegas guy. I went to Vegas 25 years straight with him.
Which I love that story. Taylor Hicks making him feel special at that show.
Yeah.
And you had a chance to share that with Taylor on our television show recently, and that was awesome.
Yeah. And so I could hear him kind of murmuring a little bit and kind of grunting a little bit. Then I said, Dad, there's nothing else you need to do here. I said, you just need to go. I'm going to pray to Jesus that he takes you, whenever you're ready, and blah, 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 blah. And my dad said, I love you. And I could hear it as plain as day. He said, I love you. And I could hear, the nurse gasp, like she's like, Richard, you spoke, and then he handed the phone back to the nurse, and he died that afternoon. And I know that he was waiting for my phone call. I knew he needed to talk to me, or
that's amazing.
He needed to tell me that he loved me first. And I just thought to myself, wow, talk about the human spirit.
He had one last order of business to take care of. He wasn't going anywhere till he did.
Yep. And he did it. And that was the kind of man he was. So, hey, great show, man. I love talking about stuff. And I think it's why a lot of people, we go ahead.
I mean, the microphone's a powerful force. I've been out here 8 days. I've done 2 sports shows at our shows on in Birmingham at 8:00 on Saturday morning. That was a 6:00 start for me. Mm-hmm. And then yesterday I got to sleep in. We weren't on for the morning after till 7:00 out here. And thank you, Tony, for letting me be on the air at 9:00 local time today. But I'm not going to miss a broadcast, even in Vegas for 8 days. Kip Keefer is still going on the phone.
You're the man. The show must go on, because I texted you this morning. I wasn't sure if he had flown back yet, and I thought, man, if that's something, I said, if he hadn't flown back yet, I'm just going to tell him to take the day off. I mean, listen.
No way.
No, and you were like, give me 30 minutes, you son of a bitch. I'm ready to go. I was like, all right, let's go, baby. I love it. All right. Well, have safe travels back here to Birmingham. I'm glad you had a great time out there on your birthday, and hope you got a wonderful time to spend with your family. It's time to get back to work. The show is fantastic. The Saturday morning show was wonderful. By the way, our picks are like through the roof again. We were hitting that middle of the season.
I actually had a good week for a change.
I did too. I was 5-1 on Saturday. I missed one play on the show, and then our K4 wins thing, we were 7-0-1 again, or something like in pros yesterday. So we were on fire. So make sure you check out our show. Starting lineup, ABC 3340 again. And I love button up against the 3 SEC games. We were right up against the Alabama-South Carolina game. Was fantastic.
The ABC schedule's been absurd. It's been so good. Yeah. And I know this week is going to be great again. Mm-hmm. You've got huge games this week. Alabama at Tennessee and Georgia at Texas on the same weekend. That is insane.
Isn't that awesome? You're going to have to watch us first, man. We're going to set you up, brother. We're going to have something to say about that.
That's for sure.
Thank you, sir.
And I tell you, I said yesterday on my show, I know we have to go, but Alabama, Tennessee, Tony, I have no idea how that game's going to go. I have no clue.
Yeah, I think the wrong team may be favored here, but Tennessee's offense just, I don't know what's going on with Tennessee's offense.
What happened to it? They were saying it was unstoppable 2 weeks ago. Well, that's not true.
They're finally starting to play some defense is what it is. But come on, they had 0 at halftime this week. What in the world? That's crazy.
We've got a great week coming up with all of our football shows, and then we'll be back here next week, first of the week, to kind of talk about those and whatever else might come to mind on Keefer and Kurre.
Safe travels, my friend. We'll see you when you get back.
Thank you, Tony.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.